Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Hi Loey, my name is Loey. Thank you so incredibly much for such a pleasant response to, I guess, our first official subscriber scary story video. I know I've definitely read you guys' stories in the past for videos, but that felt like at least the first one that was specifically structured like that, you know, and definitely the first one in a long time. There's something so incredibly fun to hear about your specific paranormal stories, to see the evidence that you may have, or just to hear them out of your own mouth. I spend so much time at night literally scaring the crap out of myself reading through your stories, but sometimes if I find one that I think might be good for a video, I'll wait to read it until I'm with all of you. So today, we're gonna be reading some of your paranormal stories together, and I really hope you guys enjoy. This scary story from my subscriber Chelsea comes with video evidence behind it. She opens up the email by saying that she's not sure if I will ever actually read it, but that she did post it once to TikTok and apparently it ended up on the wrong side of things. So we're here to correct that. This all started when Chelsea was 19 years old, working for what she says was a company that sold ghost hunting equipment. How crazy of a job is that, just to randomly work for like a ghost hunting equipment company? On the days where things were quiet, we would mess around with the equipment, such as REM pods and cat balls, both sensory equipment. I'll attach a video of that too. We witnessed some crazy stuff happen in this unit. There was an upstairs where admin was based, and one day we were all up there and there was a huge bang downstairs. When we came down, a power drill had been pushed off the counter side and the REM pod was going insane.
We're just aggravating it more.
Then when we went back upstairs, as me, colleague A, and colleague B entered the room, we watched a computer monitor get what looked like pushed off of a desk. But easily, the weirdest situation was on a down day. Me and a group of colleagues were sat upstairs in admin, and it's worth mentioning that someone we worked with had a small child that was learning to walk. So we had a lot of kids' toys, and in particular a stroller. A lot of the times we would turn off the toys because, of course, as it's admin, if the toys go off and someone's taking a call, it doesn't look great. But I digress. The stroller in particular, despite it being turned off, would keep going off as if someone was pressing buttons. I started recording because me and my friends could not believe it. And after it stopped, I said, "Are you done?" It replied, "Bye-bye," and never turned back on again. I still can't explain the stuff I experienced, but I'm still somewhat of a skeptic, short-circuiting. I don't know. I'd love to know what you think.
Are you done?
Bye-bye. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that is so unbelievably creepy, especially when it had just like been turned off before. Some short clips there. I think that the other two were just to sort of maybe add to, you know, the lore, so to speak. But the stroller story in that video is crazy.
Are you done?
When I was younger, and I'll never forget this, I was watching the first ever Paranormal Activity at a friend's house, and this friend, she was very, I guess the phrase I would use is tuned in. She always could see paranormal stuff, always like would experience things around me. We would experience a ton of stuff together. And I remember it was a whole group of us at her house. We were watching Paranormal Activity 1. And in her brother's bedroom, who was not sleeping in there, he was like sleeping in their parents' room or something, we heard toys turning on and moving around in the room by themselves. And I remember there was this one, it was like a truck or something. We literally could hear it moving across the floor. I think her dad came out and checked on things for us, and obviously nobody was in there. It was genuinely terrifying. That's what this reminds me of though.
Are you done?
I kind of love that they work in a place that sells ghost hunting equipment and specifically have a haunting. Like, how on the nose is that? Just goes to show you these ghosts, you know, they know what they're doing after all. And remember you guys, if you ever want to send me your scary stories, whether you have proof or it's just a story you want to tell me, you can send them to me at LoeyLaneStorytime@gmail.com. I am trying to do these videos more often, so please know if you send them, you do have the potential of ending up in one of these videos. The next story comes from my subscriber Dex, who said that this happened in their parents' home over the pandemic. I was isolating due to the global pandemic, with both my parents being key workers and out of the house. I was sat downstairs in the living room, probably watching something that would scare me into next week, when I heard a rustling sound upstairs, as though somebody was there, specifically in my mom's room. I grabbed a sharp object out of fear that someone had gotten in. Again, I was most likely watching scary content and crept my way upstairs, still hearing creaking. I almost got the full way up to the point where I could see into my mom's room. I feel it's important to mention we all keep the upstairs doors closed except for my mom, so I could see straight into her room. Once I reached the point where I could see, I immediately stopped my path as my eyes locked onto something. Something that fully resembled the face of my late relative, my Auntie Margaret, aka my grandpa's mom. I snapped a photo, believing it was just my eyes playing up. However, it still sits in my gallery, to me, clear as day. I've attached a photo underneath. As soon as I saw the face, my fear and anxiety of what was up there went, as though my body knew the familiarity of the face I was seeing too. All I wish is that I had an image of her to attach as well, but I sadly do not. And this is that photo. Now, I'm going to go on to talk a little bit about pareidolia and the potential of that here, but if you're asking me, I totally see what Dex was seeing, and remember, this was not through a phone screen, it was with their own eyes. Now, not only did Dex include the actual photo here, they've also included the metadata of it as well, showing that it is straight from the camera. I find this so incredibly interesting because, to be completely honest, I feel like I might normally say it's pareidolia. However, the fact that Dex was seeing this with their own eyes in the moment leads me to believe that this absolutely could be paranormal. I totally see the head, what looks like shoulders. I'm not totally sure here, but it does appear to be paranormal to me. And you guys know I'm never gonna like debunk someone's personal experience with their past loved one either, but I don't know, this one even seems a little out there for me, and I feel like I start to blame a lot of things on pareidolia, particularly on stream. If you guys ever watch my streams, anytime anything is in the background and somebody sees a face, I oftentimes will almost see things that aren't there because pareidolia. If you don't know what pareidolia is, by the way, if I'm just rattling off this word over and over, it's essentially the phenomenon where our brain wants to make sense of the world around us. And sometimes we will like see things in photo noise that isn't necessarily there. I actually just realized today that that also can mean maybe you hear someone saying something in an audio track where nobody is saying that at all. You know how people will like reverse songs and stuff like that, and they'll find hidden messages and whatnot? That can also be pareidolia. But yeah, I feel like that oftentimes is what I blame something like this on, because especially whenever I go over things that could be pareidolia in particular, like I'll almost see a different face than everyone else sees. Like I'll see something and be like, I totally see it, and everyone else will be like, Loey, we're looking in the opposite corner of where you currently are, and I'll be like, oh, okay. But this, I mean, I see it. I see the head there. Like I said, I kind of see the shoulders. I'm not sure if that's part of the piece of furniture or whatever is there. I see like hair on top of the head, and the noise is really consistent with the rest of it. Like, I think that this is a real ghost photo, to be honest. Thank you so much, Dex, for sending that to me. Wow, these are crazy. So far, all of these stories have had proof. I also take stories without proof. But dang, it's really cool to see your paranormal photos and videos. All right, you guys, things are heating up, and I don't just mean the weather, although it was like 80 degrees outside today. I am teaming up with DraftKings Casino to tell you all about how they are turning up the heat with Cash Eruption. The #1 online casino experience just got even better because yeah, Cash Eruption has officially arrived at DraftKings Casino. So you can play the fan favorite Cash Eruption or explore other exciting games like Big Bank Breakout and more. And DraftKings Casino is the official home of Cash Eruption, featuring over 10 plus Cash Eruption titles. It's bright, it's fun, and if you're anything like me and in-person casinos aren't really your jam, DraftKings Casino is the perfect way to play. Plus, with DraftKings Casino, new players play $5 and get 500 spins on Cash Eruption games. That's a minimum of $5 in wagers on Cash Eruption, and then get 500 spins on Cash Eruption games, which will be 50 spins per day for 10 10 days. New customers sign up using code Loey for this best offer. Thank you DraftKings Casino for sponsoring and supporting the channel, and now let's get back into the stories. This email was titled Demon in the Church, and immediately I had to know more. Now, my subscriber Samantha, she says that she's a big fan of the channel and she's been watching me for a while, but that this story specifically is that of her mother's. Growing up, my mom had an affinity for the paranormal, so it was normalized fairly early. She told stories of her encounters, but there was one story that always stuck with me. Mom was a teenager in the mid-80s and was having a sleepover with her friend B. B's dad was a pastor, and her family lived in a small house attached to an old country church built in the late 1800s. B had two brothers, John being older and George being younger, and they shared a room across the hall from B. B's parents' room was on the other side of the house from the kids through the living room. So, on this night, Mom and B are asleep in B's bed when B's cat, a small angry Siamese, had come darting into the room and jumped on the bed, hissing and spitting like something had chased her. In the low light and grogginess of having just been woken up, Mom could have sworn the cat's normally blue eyes were now red. Mom and B were awake just a few minutes before they heard John from the doorway say, "Hey, stop making so much noise." As he entered the room with George slightly behind him, it was then that my mom realized the noise he was talking about. There were loud and quick banging noises coming from the other side of the house. The four of them all went to investigate, and as they turned the corner of the hallway towards the parents' bedroom, Mom heard what she could only describe as hundreds of voices. It was as if they had just walked into a crowded room of people. She says she couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was deafening. As they entered B's parents' bedroom, they could see her dad standing in the middle of the bed, holding a Bible and reading a scripture. At this point, Mom turned her attention to the sliding closet doors, which were the source of the banging noise. They were opening and closing on their own. B's dad instructed Laura, her mom, to get the kids to the church. Mom was paralyzed with fear and had to be almost dragged by John. Laura ushers the kids into the church where they sit in the pews and listen to the voices and banging go on seemingly forever. Mom and B are sobbing while Laura prays and shushes them gently. Eventually, B's dad joins them in the church, still clutching his Bible and looking pale and drained. Mom remembers him whispering to Laura as she drifts into sleep. A few weeks later, B's dad walked into the chapel to prep for the morning service when he noticed the large wooden cross that hangs on the wall was upside down. It was later revealed that a male member of the congregation had been practicing something sinister. He later left, though we don't know if it was by choice. B's family moved to Kentucky a few years later, and there were no other experiences for them in their time remaining there. So here is that church. Whoa, that's crazy. That literally sounds like a horror movie. Like I could see it as this subscriber was describing it, or I guess rather hear it. How absolutely terrifying is that to hear this like whole congregation of people talking essentially. Listen, I'm from deep South Georgia, okay? And my church growing up, I had so many paranormal experiences in. I've told you about them before, but in particular, our pastor, or I guess it's the father at an Episcopalian church in particular, he would say some interesting stuff, in particular to my father. Like one time my dad was asking about like exorcisms and stuff, and the father was like, "Let us speak of kinder things." Like just like that, was like, we're not getting into all that. But I've always said that churches are some of the most haunted places, probably right up there with like hospitals and stuff like that. I grew up in the church. Like I grew up very, very religious. Like my parents worked there. I spent every Wednesday, every Sunday, every Saturday in church, and I have had more paranormal experiences than I can count. So this does not surprise me, and I completely believe it's real. Thank you so much, Samantha and your mom, for sharing. This next paranormal photo comes from a subscriber of mine who does want to remain anonymous, but it is one of the creepiest things I have ever seen. This takes place many years ago, back when this poster was in high school. When I was in high school, I believe my sophomore year, 2010, my cousin came over to visit from Florida for the summer. I lived in a town called Tucker in Metro Atlanta. Everything was cool and we were just doing what teenage girls do. We were chilling under a soft red blanket on the couch watching anime. Then my cousin had to use the bathroom, so I took that opportunity to refill my cup with juice. I unconsciously flung the blanket to my right so we could get up and do our business. When I came back, I put the cup down on the table where I was sitting before I looked up at the couch and I saw this. And it looks like that blanket is covering somebody, as if someone is sitting beneath it. I froze in place for a second before backing up to my hallway. As I did that, my cousin flushed the toilet and came out of the bathroom. She saw me, asked if I was okay, and I just pointed. We freaked out. She was convinced I did it to prank her. I spent about 20 minutes trying to recreate this photo. Didn't work. Still to this day, I've never been able to recreate it. A video you made a while back reminded me of this memory. That's interesting because I was actually thinking of a very specific TikTok when I saw this. And then a couple days ago, I decided to be nostalgic and look through my old emails, and I found it. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever taken a picture of. Mind you, she had an old flip phone during this time, which explains the quality here. Also explains that it probably wouldn't be edited. It still sends chills down my body when I look at it. And earlier, we talked about pareidolia. This can totally be a kind of pareidolia. When you see a pillow on a chair or a jacket draped over something in the middle of the night and you're like, oh my God, somebody's there, and it's definitely just these inanimate objects. That could be what's happening here for sure. But it's crazy that she just sort of flung it to the side, to get up, go to the bathroom and all of that. And it's just there as if it's covering a person. It could have been a prank by the cousin, I guess, but no matter what, this is a pretty creepy paranormal photo, and I'm so thankful that it was shared with me. So, this story. My therapist saw an unexplained figure in my house. That is the subject line of this email. I live directly in front of a cemetery, which includes graves dating back to the 1700s. Of course, this has led to us making many jokes about my house being haunted whenever we hear noises around the house. I've only had a couple actually weird/unexplainable experiences, but I had mostly forgotten about them until this happened a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a virtual appointment with my therapist and had my back to the door of the office, which was open. While we were talking, she stopped and said, "Oh, is your mom home?" And I said no, because she wasn't. To which my therapist replied, "Is anyone home?" And again, I said no and asked why. "I could have sworn I just saw somebody in the hallway behind you." My stomach dropped. Obviously, I turned around immediately, but there was nothing there, of course. I stepped out into the hallway and looked into the other rooms, still on call with my therapist because I was not going to wait until after my session and look into it alone. There was nothing. And I hadn't heard footsteps, which I would have if there was anyone walking around, because the stairs and pretty much the entire floor creaks loudly when someone is walking. I went back into the office, but positioned myself so that I could see the door. After that, I was telling my therapist about the other things that had happened that I'd forgotten. A couple years ago, I was babysitting for one of my cousins, and we were sitting in the living room playing when we heard something fall in the kitchen. When we went to see what it was, there was nothing knocked over. Not on the floor or on the counters. Everything was where it was supposed to be. I checked the dining room too, which is between the living room and the kitchen, but everything was where it should have been in there too. It was weird because it didn't sound like something small. It was a pretty significant noise. While we were still in the kitchen, there was another big crash from the living room. The kid's bag was upside down on the floor with everything in it dumped out. That wouldn't have been too weird, except that the bag had been in the center of the table, nowhere near the edge. It couldn't have just fallen on its own. The kid was laughing and just started picking up her toys and playing again. I sat back down with her and tried to relax, but I was very unsettled for the rest of the day. It wasn't long after that happened that I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow standing in the hallway in between my room and my mom's room. There were no features, but I got the sense that it was a man. And that alone felt weird because it was just a shadow and there was nothing to discern any details, let alone a gender. But I just knew somehow. I just stared at him for a long time, waiting for him to move or do something, I guess. I don't know. I know that I was awake and it wasn't sleep paralysis because I could move and breathe just fine, unlike when I have sleep paralysis. Then he suddenly vanished between one blink and the next, and I went back to sleep. I wasn't scared when it happened. I wasn't scared looking at him. He was just there. When I woke up again the next morning, I kind of just brushed it off as being half asleep and seeing things that weren't there in the darkness. It was easier to do that when I never saw him again. Maybe it was a dream, or my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe it wasn't. I'm just glad he didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Now, to go back to my session with my therapist, I explain all of that to her and she says, "Okay, I wasn't going to say this, but I did think it was a man when I saw it. But I know you don't live with any men, so I thought it must have been your mom. This was the same hallway where I had seen the figure, probably in the same spot. This was 1:30 in the afternoon, so it wasn't a result of being half asleep or seeing shapes in the dark. There was nothing that could have cast any sort of shadow like that, and even if there was, it wouldn't have been able to just disappear. And then there was a bang. And I said out loud to my therapist, oh, absolutely not. We do have mice in our walls and we think that there might be a raccoon in our attic. Wow, that is a full house and it might be a whole other issue. Our landlords won't do anything about it. Diva, I'm pretty sure that is not legal. But anyway, there are weird noises coming from the walls and the ceiling all the time. This was not that. I looked out into the hallway and the closet at the end of the hall was wide open. It had been pushed completely shut and nothing in it that might have pushed the door open had fallen. It was just open for no reason. My therapist told me I should call an exorcist or something. Even though nothing really happened per se, it was still incredibly unsettling. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened since either. But every noise has me looking over my shoulder now. I know it's not the scariest thing you've read. There have been some truly terrifying ones on your channel, but I hope you still enjoyed reading it. So then also she includes this. It's a sketch of the house basically. So you can see there the room, the office, the stairs, the bathroom, the closet, the mom's room. And the circle there is roughly where that shadow was. That is absolutely terrifying. This came from my subscriber, Olivia. Olivia, thank you so much. Honestly, I think that was one of the scarier stories I personally ever read on the channel. I loved reading it. The fact that your therapist even said that they had also seen this figure, the fact that you then have this story behind it, your therapist clearly didn't know that before, that is truly terrifying. So I don't want to scare you, but I might agree that your house across from the 1700 cemetery is a wee bit haunted. This story is titled The Man in the Parking Lot. Hi Loey, my name is Daisy. I am 20 years old and I live in a very small Ohio town called Craig Beach. For the past few days, I've debated on whether or not to share this weird experience my best friend Sarah and I had. I wasn't and am still not 100% sure if that night was paranormal, a glitch in the matrix, or maybe just a creepy experience. For a little background, living in a small town has its advantages. However, being young and bored certainly is on the disadvantage list because all there is to do is drive around and sit in parking lots yapping. This specific night was a mixture of both. Sarah and I decided to hang out at about 2 to 3 a.m. We drove to our favorite parking lot and talked for a little over an hour and a half before deciding to drive around. As they were driving down a dimly lit road, unfortunately, there was a skunk who was not quick enough to get out of the way. The car smelled crazy, as you can probably assume. After we couldn't get the smell to air out, so we headed towards the beach parking lot so that they could park, open all the doors. Now, this specific parking lot has street lights lined down the middle of the rows, and around that whole lot is a walking path with views of the lake and the little park. As we were pulling into park, we noticed a man. He seemed to be older, maybe late 60s, early 70s, walking slowly through the parking lot. This night, the parking lot seemed dimmer than usual. It was about 4:30 a.m. at this point, and the ground was covered in about 4 inches of snow and ice, as we had just had a snowstorm hit us. Between that and the temperature that night, it seemed very odd for an elderly man to just be on a stroll. Once Sarah and I had seen the man, we decided it would be best to just leave and not risk getting out. So we continued through the parking lot exit. As we approached the stop sign to pull onto the main road, I looked over to my left and the man was standing right by the road, completely still, staring. What seemed odd to me was that as we approached where he was standing, he didn't even glance in our direction, as I assume anyone else would when there's a car coming towards you. He was like a statue, staring right at us. We turned out of the parking lot and very quickly drove away to make a lap around the block and debrief on what the heck had just happened. Almost instantly as we were turning out of the parking lot, both Sarah and I got a disgusting feeling in our stomach. We felt nauseous, cramps, and just an overwhelming feeling. Now, the block isn't a far drive, maybe 8 minutes tops, to end back to the parking lot. I looked at the entire walking path as we drove past, and the man was nowhere to be seen. The weirdest part? I didn't even see any footprints in the snow where the man was walking. Like I said previously, to this day, I'm not sure what we encountered that night. All I know is that I've never felt that way before, and I hope to never feel that way again. The specific lake that I live on was a man-made lake, built over Native American burial grounds. There's also been countless drownings and unfortunate deaths in this lake. Sarah has vivid memories of swimming there when she was young and feeling something grabbing at her legs. I've only lived here since 2020 and have hundreds of scary stories from the area. The lesson I've learned living here is to never let your guard down because you never know what is lurking in Craig Beach, Ohio. Whoa, the legend of Craig Beach, Ohio, man. I'm sure this had to be incredibly unsettling. How I understand this story, because I got a little confused there for a sec, is that while the car was approaching, it wasn't like this guy like turned his head to look at the car. He was just staring straight forward. And that would eventually be where he was staring as they like drove away. Either way, at like 4:30 in the morning and there's snow and ice everywhere, who the heck is out that late, you know? Last but not least, we have this story from my subscriber, Emily, who says that right next to her childhood home, we have a barn that has always belonged to my grandfather, who passed away about 5 years ago. In this barn lived his beautiful horse Dancer, who he loved to care for. Long after he no longer had her, it was mostly used as storage. He was a collector of antiques and collected his entire life. Furniture, clocks, books, basically anything you can think of. There are many of his antiques still in the barn today. It's about 10 feet away from our house, quite literally on the lawn of our home, in between his house and ours. My parents now own this barn. We live in a very small town with a very old history, and my dad has always told me how flooded with spirits the land we live on is, and his own personal experiences with the supernatural that he's experienced throughout his childhood. My mom, who's also very spiritual and very in tune with what lies on the other side, decided one day to set up a motion sensor camera inside the barn. She sent me a few videos of what sounds like boots walking around in the attic, doors shutting, people talking, and what almost sounds like someone shuffling through the horse feed. It's almost as if my grandfather is still feeding Dancer, his beloved horse, which I find so sweet. What I find the most interesting is that one particular photo she sent me when the camera went off one night. If you look at the door in the back left of the photo through the window, it looks like there's a woman peeking inside. When I saw this, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I truly see a face, and it almost looks like her mouth is agape. It also kind of looks like she's wearing glasses, like the old circular kind. I thought you would find this interesting, so I had to share it. I'm curious who this woman is, if she's connected to any of his antiques, or maybe someone from our family who had passed long ago. Spookiest regards, Emily. Okay, I'm opening up the photo now. I can see what she's talking about there. Ooh, okay, another example of something that could be pareidolia, but kind of doesn't seem like it. Like, I could totally see this being pareidolia for sure. Like, you know, you're seeing something that's not really there, especially because it's probably not the grandfather. It sounds like the grandfather has a very pleasant routine around the barn still. But I see this face. Man, I'm kind of trying to convince myself that's pareidolia because I have to go to sleep in here tonight, but that really actually looks like a face. Whoa. Wait, this is kind of crazy. I don't know if I can like pass this one off as nothing now. It definitely looks like a real image as well. It looks like it's like from a security camera or something like that. You can see the dates and the temperature and all that fun stuff at the bottom from like 2019. I think this one is paranormal. I do think that's a ghost. And I mean, honestly, the property is so old, it would not surprise me if it's haunted. But let me know what you see in that photo. This is one of the craziest paranormal photos you guys have ever sent me. There you have it, you guys. I'm not sure what number we ended up at tonight, but those were some of your personal paranormal stories, and I absolutely loved reading them alongside you. If you ever want to shoot me your story, don't forget you can do so at LoeyLaneStorytime@gmail.com. Don't forget that when you send me an email, you do have the chance to be featured here on the channel, and I can't wait to see you guys' personal scary videos and stories and pictures and stuff. This is so fun. It really feels so collaborative between us, and I can't wait to do more of these videos with all of you. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. A special thank you to my subscribers who are members of the channel. If you want to join the channel membership and get extra members exclusive perks like members only videos, you can click that little join button somewhere around the screen. We would love to have you. An extra special thank you to my VIP loves for their continued and generous support of the channel. I love and appreciate you all very, very much. I love you all very much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.